The world had grown quiet, not the peaceful kind, but a silence thick with dread. Buildings stood hollow, streets blanketed in ash and weeds, and the sky above the dead zone remained in permanent twilight. No birds. No engines. Only the wind and the faint groans that came from the shadows. For years, the dead zone had been written off. Governments fell. Satellite images showed only decay. Every mission sent to explore it had gone silent. It became the no man's land of the New World. A place whispered about in survivor camps, often with trembling voices and downcast eyes. But then something happened. A signal. Faint, distorted, but real. A cracked transmission broke through the static one morning, intercepted by a scavenger team from the New West Coalition. 3 words. Hope still breathes. It came from deep inside the dead zone. The voice was human. Determined. Alive. Captain Elara Miles stood over the battered radio, listening again and again to the loop. She was skeptical. She had seen too many lures used by bandits or worse, undead traps set by groups who had lost their minds and turned savage. But this voice didn't sound like bait. It sounded like a promise. There could be people alive in there, said Kaylin, her second in command. 50, maybe more. We can't ignore it. Elara sighed, gripping the edge of the map spread across the table. I'm not ignoring it. I'm planning a way in that doesn't get us all killed. By sundown, she had hand-picked a team of 8 to enter the outskirts of the dead zone and find the source. Not soldiers, but survivors, people who had already lost everything and were still standing. Among them was Mara, a medic with a haunted past, Beck, a radio tech who once helped build the very transmitters now picking up the signal, and Jace, a silent tracker who had survived 3 years in the wild without backup. Their mission was simple in theory: infiltrate the dead zone, locate the origin of the message, and confirm if anyone was truly alive. They left at first light, moving in a silent convoy of 3 armored utility trucks. The roads grew worse the deeper they went. Nature had started to reclaim the land, but not in a lively way. The green was sickly. The vines crawled like veins across rusted signs, and cars lay like carcasses half-sunk into the road. By the time they reached the perimeter of the dead zone, their radios crackled to life, briefly, and then died. No contact from here on, Beck confirmed, checking his gear. Something about this place kills the signal fast. Elara ordered a halt. We walk from here. Quietly. Stay sharp. The team advanced on foot, weapons raised but voices low. The further they walked, the more the air itself felt heavier. The sky dimmed unnaturally, and an odd pressure pushed against their ears like a storm building far away. Mara paused near a collapsed storefront. This place doesn't feel right, she murmured. It isn't, Jace replied. Nothing about it is. Then came the first sighting. A figure shambled across the intersection ahead, slow, twitching, but unmistakably human in shape. Yet its face was wrong. Covered with a patchwork mask of old cloth, stitched crudely across its head. It didn't moan. It didn't chase. It just stood there. Weird behavior, Elara whispered. Is it one of them? Looks like a watcher, Jace said. Some survivors in deep zones use them to mark territory. They leave infected tied or roaming as early warning systems. The group passed carefully, eyes always scanning the shadows. Every block seemed to hide movement, but nothing approached. The stillness was not peace, it was the calm that comes before a scream. Finally, as dusk fell, they found it, the broken remains of a broadcast tower half swallowed by vines and tilted toward the sky like a dying giant. This is where the signal originated, Beck confirmed. Same frequency, same power range. It came from here. But there was no one there. Just as Elara opened her mouth to call for a sweep, the ground beneath them trembled. A hidden speaker somewhere beneath the rubble buzzed to life. "You found us," the voice crackled again, stronger this time, clearer. "But the dead zone doesn't let go easily. If you've come to help, be ready to fight for more than just survival." The message ended with coordinates. Elara looked around at her team. "Get ready. This just got real." Unseen by them, across the rooftops, figures moved. Watching. Waiting. The dead zone wasn't dead. It was waking up. The last rays of daylight faded behind the crumbling skyline, casting the ruins of the dead zone into an eerie bluish hue. The team stood in silence, the coordinates from the voice still glowing on Beck's cracked tablet screen. There was no debate, whoever sent the signal knew they were here. And they were watching. "We move now," Elara ordered, slinging her rifle across her back. "We don't want to be caught out here when night fully drops." They moved through narrow alleyways, stepping over collapsed fences and shattered glass. Beck guided them using a backup compass and offline map overlay. The signal's origin was just under 2 miles away, but every corner could be a death trap. Something about the dead zone made time feel warped. Shadows stretched too long. Footsteps echoed strangely. Even the silence felt like it was listening. Then they reached it, a barricade made from old buses, metal scraps, and burned cars, welded together to form a towering wall. Painted in faded white letters across the top were the words, "You want to live? Prove it." Mara tilted her head. "This looks like a settlement wall. Who the hell built this out here?" Jace scanned the surroundings. "Survivors. Smart ones. This isn't scavenger work, it's structured." A faint whirring sound buzzed above them. They looked up to see a small drone hovering, its lens blinking red as it circled them. Then a voice, clearer this time, boomed from hidden speakers. "Approach the gate. No sudden moves. Weapons down." Elara hesitated. "No. We're not dropping arms in the middle of the dead zone." The voice returned, calm but firm. "This is the only way in. You're either here to help, or to destroy. Decide now." Jace narrowed his eyes. "They're serious." With a tense glance at her team, Elara nodded. One by one, they lowered their weapons to the ground but didn't step away. Seconds later, part of the barricade hissed and began to shift, revealing a tight passageway lit by flickering LED strips. A woman stood inside, cloaked in patchwork armor, a scarf covering the lower half of her face, only her sharp eyes visible. "You've made it further than most," she said, motioning them through. "Welcome to the fringe." Inside was a maze of makeshift buildings, solar panels, greenhouses crafted from shattered windows, and dozens of people, dirty, quiet, wary. Most were armed. Children peeked out from behind scrap metal doors. No one smiled. "I'm Kira," the woman introduced herself. "Leader, if that word still means anything. We're the ones who sent the signal." 50 people? Beck asked. 52, she corrected. "If you count the ones who can't walk anymore." Elara stepped forward. "Why send the message now? This zone's been silent for years." Kira led them through a tight corridor into what looked like a command center, radios, maps, solar monitors. "Because the balance is shifting. We've held on, hiding, surviving, adapting. But the infected are changing too. Smarter. Faster. Something out there is coordinating them." Beck's eyes widened. "You're saying they're organizing?" "They're hunting," Kira said grimly. "And the old safe paths? They're gone. We've already lost 3 outer camps. We need help or we won't last another month." Mara stepped closer to a wall plastered with hand-drawn maps and infection patterns. "Why us?" "Because no one else answered," Kira replied. We've tried reaching other survivor zones. No response. We were beginning to think we were the last. Elara folded her arms. You're not. But we didn't come here just to die for someone else's cause. If we help, we need answers. What's really happening here? Kira walked to a corner shelf and pulled out a small, sealed metal case. She opened it to reveal a hard drive, old and dented. It's what started it. Recovered from a research facility on the east side of the zone. We believe it holds data on how the infection evolved, and maybe how to stop it. Why haven't you left with it? Jace asked. Because the main path is overrun, and any other exit is suicide without a guide, Kira said. But we've heard rumors of a tunnel, an old subway line that might still be clear. A pause. The room tensed. You want our help getting this to the outside world? Elara asked. Kira nodded. That, or help us open the tunnel and bring others in. Either way, we can't stay hidden forever. Before Elara could answer, a loud alarm echoed through the base. Red lights flashed. Breach, someone shouted from outside. South wall. Kira grabbed a rifle. You said you came to help. Time to prove it. Elara looked at her team. Then she grabbed her weapon and ran toward the chaos. The dead zone wasn't just waking up. It was testing them. The alarm's wail tore through the compound like a scream in the dark. Crimson lights flashed along the corridors as people scrambled for weapons, guiding children and the elderly toward fortified shelters. Dust shook loose from overhead beams. Somewhere in the distance, too close, came the sound of something heavy crashing against metal. Elara pushed through the narrow walkway beside Kira, both women sprinting toward the south wall. Behind them, Jace loaded his crossbow with calm precision. Mara gripped her med kit tightly, nerves showing in her clenched jaw. Beck clutched a sidearm like it might disappear from his grip. Status? Kira shouted to a young guard perched on the barricade. Movement at Gate 3, the teen answered, wide-eyed. Fast and quiet. Not a full swarm, something else. Scouts, Jace muttered, stepping beside Elara. They're testing the wall. Not mindless. Elara's gut tightened. They're hunting again. Through a narrow viewport, Elara peered into the darkness. Shapes moved in the distance, pale and slow at first, then jerking violently. Some crawled low like predators, skimming the ground, others stalked upright, watching the defenses. Their faces were masked in scraps of cloth and leather, hiding the rot, but their glowing eyes gleamed with a strange alertness. Kira raised a flared gun and fired. A bright red light arced across the night sky, and the zone erupted. Figures sprinted from cover, faster than any of them expected. They hurled themselves at the wall, clawing and thrashing, trying to scale the sharp edges of twisted metal. The guards fired back, crossbows, pistols, repurposed construction tools modified into weapons. Even the children who trained with slings began pelting rocks from rooftops. This isn't a random breach, Kira hissed, dropping another target. They're coordinated. Beck scrambled to power the defense grid. Trying to reroute backup solar to the shock fence. It's half dead. Mara ducked beside a wounded sentry, applying pressure to a bite across his forearm. Hold still. You're not turning. Not tonight. Elara took position atop a makeshift tower and aimed into the chaos. Jace, flank left. We stop them here or we all go under. Jace moved like a shadow, slinking down the stairwell and into the dark alleys, disappearing into smoke and flame. A shriek echoed near the gate, sharp and shrill, inhuman. Then one of them breached. A lithe figure slipped between the metal and dropped into the courtyard. It was tall, unusually intact, wearing a torn lab coat. A symbol still clung to its sleeve, an old Science Division logo. Its face was completely wrapped in gauze, but its eyes were human, calculating. It didn't run. It stood, staring. Everyone froze. "What is that?" Mara whispered. Before anyone could answer, the figure turned and sprinted toward the interior. "Stop it!" Elara barked, firing a round into its leg. It stumbled but didn't fall. "It's heading for the core." Kira cursed. "The lab, where the drive is stored." Elara jumped from the tower, landing hard and chasing the intruder. Kira followed, rifle up, barking orders at her people to contain the courtyard. Inside the labyrinth of metal corridors, the echo of boots chased the rapid tap of the intruder's bare feet. It turned corners blindly, knocking over crates, scattering tools. Elara rounded a bend just in time to see it breach the command hut. She charged in behind it. The room was dim. Solar lights flickered above the hard drive vault. The intruder was already at the terminal, clawing at wires, trying to disconnect something. Elara didn't hesitate. She tackled it, slamming them both to the ground. The thing hissed, actually hissed, and twisted violently beneath her. Elara gritted her teeth and struck its head against the floor, hard. The gauze slipped for a moment, revealing a sickly gray mouth twisted into a grim, unnatural grin. Before it could scream, Kira arrived and fired a stun bolt into its side. It collapsed, spasming. Elara stood, panting. That was no ordinary infected. It knew what it wanted, Kira said, kneeling to examine it. It went straight for the data. Beck arrived moments later, pale. The shock fence is back online. They're retreating outside, but that thing got past everything. Elara nodded grimly. Because it's not one of them anymore. It's something new. Kira's voice dropped. Then we're running out of time. They locked the vault down tighter than ever and posted guards through the night. The air inside the base felt heavier now. The survivors had stood their ground, but the illusion of safety was gone. As the fires from the battle flickered across the makeshift walls, Elara sat near the main tower and watched the skyline. Hope still breathed here, but so did something else. And it was watching. Morning in the dead zone wasn't like morning anywhere else. There was no birdsong, no warmth rising with the sun. Only a thin gray light bleeding through the smog, casting long shadows over the broken metal walls of the fringe. Inside the command hut, the strange intruder was restrained, tied to a reinforced chair with its limbs bound tightly and a gag covering the lower half of its face. Its eyes remained wide open. Watching. Unblinking. It hasn't spoken since it woke, Mara said, crouching near it. No growling, no lunging. Just silence. Elara paced behind her, arms crossed. It's waiting. It didn't come here by mistake. Kira entered, holding a dusty folder with a faded government seal. We found this tucked inside a storage crate near the old med ward. It's marked Phase 4, Behavioral Response Units. That symbol matches the one on the intruder's sleeve. Beck stepped forward, curiosity overpowering his unease. Behavioral response? Sounds like a military science experiment. Kira nodded. It was. According to what we've pieced together, the dead zone was once a live field lab. They were testing treatments on infected subjects, controlling aggression, slowing decay, even enhancing certain traits. Enhancing? Jace leaned against the doorframe, his voice low. They tried to make them stronger? Smarter, Kira corrected. At first to control outbreaks. Then for more, tactical purposes. Elara's gaze narrowed. Weapons. Kira dropped the folder on the table. Exactly. The group turned their attention back to the restrained figure. Its lab coat bore the number BRU-47. The skin beneath the gauze seemed too intact for a long-term infected. Its jaw clenched when spoken about, but it still didn't speak. Mara leaned in, examining its eyes with a flashlight. They respond to light. They're conscious. Elara exhaled slowly. Let's see if it responds to truth. She removed the gag, slowly. At first, nothing. Then the figure licked its lips, dry, cracked, still strangely human. Finally, it whispered, "You're too late." Kira's hand hovered near her weapon. Too late for what? They're waking, the creature said. All of them. Below. Beneath your feet. Elara stepped closer. What's beneath us? The intruder chuckled weakly. You walk on graves. Old labs. The buried cities. We were made there. Forgotten there. Beck's fingers tightened around the data drive he'd been holding since the breach. What's on this? What does it show? The thing's smile faded. Hope. Regret. And the reason no one from outside dares come here. Its head lolled to the side. They knew what they were doing. And they knew we'd never stop remembering. The room fell into a tense silence. Outside, the settlement stirred, but everyone inside knew something had changed. Elara turned to Beck. Can you decrypt the drive? Maybe, he said. But I'll need the old core server. The portable terminals can't run deep military encryption. That server's still in sub-level 1, Kira said quietly. Below the fringe. Below? Elara repeated. Yeah. This outpost was built on top of an old bunker, one of the original medical command centers. We sealed it off years ago after a cave-in. But the access shaft is still there. Mara looked doubtful. And you just want us to stroll into it now? We don't have a choice, Kira said. The more we know, the better chance we have to stop whatever's coming. Elara took one last look at the restrained intruder. Keep it under lock. If it says anything else, let me know. They gathered supplies, headlamps, breathing masks, and emergency comms. Jace insisted on leading, citing his experience navigating underground terrain. Beck carried the drive like it was made of glass. Kira joined them, guiding them through an old hatch near the greenhouse. The tunnel sloped downward, lined with rusted pipes and thick cables long dead. Every step stirred dust that hadn't moved in years. After 30 feet, they reached a reinforced blast door. Kira keyed in an override code, and with a groan, the door slid open. Beyond it was the old world. Metal walls, ceiling lights flickering with dying power, and walls lined with shattered terminals. Desks were overturned. Papers were scattered. It looked like a place abandoned in panic. Watch for anything moving, Jace whispered. They descended deeper into sub-level 1, reaching the server room. To their surprise, the generator hummed faintly, solar batteries above still feeding power to a few machines. Beck rushed forward. This might work. As he plugged the drive into the terminal, files began to load. One after another. Classified reports. Research logs. Video recordings. One clip began to play, a scientist in a hazmat suit speaking to a camera. We've made contact with subject BRU-47. Speech is returning. Intelligence appears intact. The infection is changing. Evolving. This isn't containment anymore. It's a countdown. Then the power flickered. And went out. Jace's voice cut through the dark. Did you hear that? From the hallway, a sharp tapping sound echoed. Rhythmic. Deliberate. Something else was down here. And it wasn't alone. The tapping grew louder, measured, sharp, and uncomfortably close. Beck froze at the terminal, the last screen still displaying fragments of corrupted data. The generator had died, and with it, the only light source. Darkness filled the old bunker like a living thing. Don't move, Jace whispered. His voice echoed off the walls, swallowed by the dark. Elara flicked on her flashlight, the narrow beam piercing the gloom ahead. Dust swirled through the light like mist, and the tapping stopped. A second later, a low, mechanical hiss echoed from the hull. "Something's down here," Mara murmured, pulling her backpack closer. "No," Beck said. "Not something. Some things." He gestured toward the wall behind them. A smear of fresh handprints, wet, dark, and too large for a human, ran across the surface, trailing into a side corridor. "This area was supposed to be sealed," Kira whispered, her voice tight. "Guess it wasn't sealed enough," Jace muttered, loading another bolt into his crossbow. "Time to move," Elara said. "We've got what we came for. We can't hold this place." As the group backed toward the stairwell, a shadow moved ahead of them, fast. A blur, then stillness. A second form followed, darting across the hallway at inhuman speed. Mara gasped. "They're hurting us." Elara gritted her teeth. "Upstairs. Now." They turned and ran. Boots pounded against concrete, flashlights swinging wildly. The corridor twisted unnaturally, longer than any of them remembered. The air grew colder, heavier. A low sound echoed from the walls, almost like whispering. Beck stumbled, clutching the hard drive close. Jace yanked him upright without a word, dragging him forward. Behind them, the whispering turned into screeching. Kira turned back just in time to see a figure, hulking, limping, but fast, emerge from the darkness. Its skin was stretched tight over bones. Mechanical implants glinted from its limbs. A prototype. Half human. Half something else. "Go," she screamed, raising her weapon and firing into the hallway. The beast staggered but didn't stop. Elara reached the blast door first and slammed her palm onto the emergency override. The door groaned, then hissed open just wide enough for them to slip through. Everyone scrambled through, Beck, Jace, Mara. Kira was last. As she reached the threshold, the creature lunged. Its fingers brushed her coat as Elara grabbed her hand and yanked her inside. The door slammed shut behind them. The group collapsed in the tunnel, panting, blood pounding in their ears. "What was that?" Mara asked. "Version 2, Beck said hoarsely. "That was the next step in whatever experiment created BRU-47. It wasn't just infection, they tried enhancement." Kira stared at the sealed door. "That wasn't a zombie. That was a soldier." They returned to the fringe in silence, the hard drive secured and guarded. The sun had risen above the ruined city, but no one felt safe. The air was still, thick with tension. Inside the command hut, Elara, Beck, and Kira gathered with the remaining team leaders. "The data is partial," Beck explained, connecting the drive to a surviving terminal. "But it shows enough. The dead zone wasn't just a quarantine area, it was a conversion site. A proving ground for merging human intelligence with the infection. Not curing it. Controlling it." Mara frowned. "That's why they left it behind. It failed." Beck shook his head. "No. It worked. Just not the way they expected." He brought up a screen showing test logs. Subjects exhibited heightened awareness, strategic planning, memory retention. "And some remembered who they were," Beck said. "Even after full transformation." "That's what BRU-47 meant," Elara murmured. "They remember." Kira crossed her arms. "Which means they hold grudges. Against those who made them. Against those who abandoned them. And now they want out." A knock at the door broke the tension. One of the lookouts entered. "We've got movement," he said. "Northern perimeter. A group. Humans. Survivors. From outside the zone?" Jace asked. "No," the lookout said. From inside. They're marked. Same symbol as the intruder's coat. But they're not attacking. The group hurried to the lookout post. Through binoculars, they saw them, 4 figures walking slowly through the rubble. Tattered coats. Covered faces. One of them carried a white flag made from cloth and bent steel wire. Beck adjusted the focus. That one on the right. I think he's human. How can you tell? Mara asked. Because he's limping. That's not infected movement. Elara lowered the binoculars. Get a squad ready. We meet them at the wall. No sudden moves. Kira hesitated. You think they want to talk? I think they want something, Elara said. And right now, that's more dangerous than a straight-up fight. As the gates prepared to open, one thing was certain, the line between human and infected was gone. And whatever walked toward them now, it was part of something bigger. Something coming. The gate groaned open with a heavy metallic screech, its reinforced panels parting slowly to reveal the devastated street beyond. Dust swirled in the sunlight. All weapons were drawn but not raised, no one wanted to make the first mistake. Elara stood at the front of the welcoming party, flanked by Jace and Mara. Kira stood slightly behind, watching every movement from atop the inner wall. The approaching group stopped 20 paces from the entrance. 4 figures. All cloaked in the same tattered material, symbols etched across their sleeves, remnants of the same program the data drive had revealed. The figure in front, tall, limping, face half covered in gauze, raised his hands in a clear gesture of peace. I'm not here to fight, he said. His voice was hoarse but human. Name's Corin. Used to be part of a research team. I've come with a warning. Jace narrowed his eyes. A warning from inside the dead zone? Corin nodded slowly. There's something moving beneath the surface. We're running out of time. The group stood in tense silence. Elara glanced toward Kira, who gave a nod. Let them in, Elara ordered. But keep eyes on them. Every second. The 4 newcomers were escorted through a secondary checkpoint, where their weapons were checked, basic tools, not military gear, and their faces finally revealed. 2 of them were clearly altered. Their eyes glowed faintly in low light. Their skin bore the strange, scar-like pattern seen on BRU-47. But they didn't growl or lunge. They stood still, shoulders low, breathing steady. Hybrids, Beck muttered under his breath. They're walking proof of the program's next phase. Inside the main hall, Corin spoke while the others stood silent behind him. We were part of a division called Helix 3. Tasked with finding ways to preserve intelligence post-infection. The early subjects, like BRU-47, lost stability fast. But we learned. We found a method to delay full neural decay. In some cases, reverse it. Mara leaned forward, skeptical. You're telling me you cured zombies? No, Corin replied. We found a way to keep some of them human. But it comes at a cost. He motioned to the 2 altered figures beside him. They live in between. Not fully infected. Not fully human. Their minds flicker. Some days they're clear. Some days the virus pulls them under. Beck looked stunned. And you're here to, what? Join us? Ask for shelter? Corin shook his head. No. We're here to ask for your help. The ones who made us, the ones behind the original program, left something behind. Deep in the ruins beneath Sector 9. Elara exchanged a glance with Kira. Another lab? A vault, Corin said. One that holds the original strain. The source code of the infection itself. If it falls into the wrong hands, if the hybrids lose control, it could become airborne. Mara's face went pale. Airborne? Yes, Corin said grimly. We found fragments of the research before the facility collapsed. The infection was originally designed to be a failsafe, targeted, contained. But it mutated. Sector 9 holds the only known key to rewriting or stopping it. Jace crossed his arms. And I suppose you want us to go there with you? No, Corin said. I'm not asking. I'm warning you. The ones who haven't lost themselves completely, like us, we're being hunted. Something is waking up in that vault. Something smarter than the rest. It's gathering control of the infected hives. You saw them at the breach. They weren't random. They were coordinated. Beck leaned over to Elara and whispered, if he's telling the truth, we need that vault. It could change everything. Elara's mind raced. She had trusted her instincts this far. Corin didn't read like a liar. And his companions, while strange, showed no aggression. She looked to Kira. Your call. This is your outpost. Kira stepped forward, studying Corin. You brought danger to our gates. But you might have also brought answers. You'll stay under supervision. One move out of line, and you're done. Understood? Corin nodded. Agreed. We don't want a war. We want a future. Later that night, Elara stood on the watchtower, overlooking the ruins. The city stretched out in jagged silence. Somewhere beneath it, this vault slept, or stirred. Jace joined her quietly. You trust them? I don't trust anyone, Elara said. But I believe them. That's enough for now. Below, Corin sat by the fire with the two altered figures. One of them stared blankly at the flames, humming an old tune that none of them recognized. It sounded peaceful. But peace in the dead zone never lasted. And by dawn, a decision would have to be made. They would either leave the fringe, and descend into the ruins of Sector 9, or wait for whatever was coming to rise first. They left at dawn. Not because it was safer, but because any longer would have meant backing out. Second-guessing. Dying slowly behind walls while something smarter than any of them grew stronger beneath their feet. Elara led the team, hers, and now Corin's. Together, 10 souls descended into the buried remains of what was once the central research zone. Sector 9. They moved quietly through broken city streets, past hollow buildings swallowed by vines and ash. Every footstep stirred memories of the world before. Billboards faded by fire. Playgrounds turned to skeletons of rust. No one spoke much. Even Beck, who usually filled silence with nervous chatter, was too focused, double-checking the drive, recalibrating his scanner, eyes locked on the signal tracker pinging a faint beacon from underground. They reached the access point by mid-morning. It was a monolith of steel, half buried beneath a collapsed parking structure. Vines grew over the entrance like scars, and a warning symbol, biohazard crossed with military insignia, had been scratched off by hand. This is it, Corin said quietly. We go in here, we don't come back the same. Jace loaded his crossbow. Too late for that. The elevator shaft leading down was dead, but the maintenance ladder held. They descended single file, each rung groaning under their weight. The deeper they went, the colder it became. At last, they dropped into darkness, Sector 9's upper hallway. Flashlights flicked on. Mara immediately covered her mouth. The air smells like copper. Blood and chemicals, Kira muttered. Same scent we found in the lower wards of the fringe during the first outbreak. The hall was a time capsule, walls covered in peeling signs and smeared handprints. The floor was littered with shattered tablets, syringes, overturned lab carts. Everything was exactly as it had been left the day the zone went dark. Down this way, Beck said, following the tracker. Signals coming from a locked vault about 300 meters ahead. They moved cautiously, passing rooms marked genetic storage, infection simulation, and cognitive response lab. Behind cracked glass, things moved. Slowly. Unnaturally. They left test subjects in here, Mara said. Alive. Not anymore, Jace said grimly. There's something else now. Suddenly, Corin stopped. Wait. Everyone froze. Ahead, where two corridors intersected, shadows moved. A low, metallic scraping echoed through the space. Then came the sound of breathing, wet and rattling. A tall figure stepped into the light. It wasn't like the others. It didn't shamble. It stood straight. A mask covered its face, more mechanical than organic. Tubes connected from its jaw to its back. One eye glowed red. The others whispered in unison. Sentinel. Beck whispered, it's one of the final prototypes. Designed to protect the vault. Corin's face was pale. They don't patrol. They hunt. The sentinel turned slowly toward them, and charged. Elara didn't hesitate. Scatter. Left and right. Draw it out. The hallway erupted into chaos. Gunfire rang. Crossbows fired. The sentinel barreled forward, smashing through a gurney, sparks flying from its reinforced limbs. It knocked Mara to the ground, but Corin tackled it from behind, slowing its momentum. Get to the vault, he yelled. I'll buy you seconds. Elara, Beck, and Jace pushed forward while the others fought to delay the creature. At the end of the corridor stood a blast door sealed tight, a keypad covered in dust. Beck activated the drive. Hoping this works. The device pulsed. The keypad turned green. Access granted, a female voice echoed. The door hissed open. Inside was a circular chamber lit by emergency lights. Banks of servers lined the walls, humming faintly. In the center, behind bulletproof glass, stood a single vial of swirling dark liquid, suspended in a cryolock chamber. Beck approached the console. This is the original strain. Kira stepped beside him. And this is what started it all. Data streamed across the screen, genetic sequences, transmission models, failed vaccine protocols. But one file stood out, highlighted in red. Project Reclamation, Final Phase. Elara read the description aloud. Reclamation Protocol, use the modified strain to overwrite cognitive decay in hybrid subjects. Restore memory. Control evolution. Corin entered, limping and bruised. That's what we were meant to be. They wanted to guide evolution. Not stop the virus, shape it. Mara helped him sit. The sentinel? Down, Corin said. But not for long. Beck turned to Elara. This data could change everything. If we get it out, maybe we can find a way to halt mutation. Save who's left. Or, Jay said, it draws every infected within 5 miles straight to us. Alarms began to echo through the chamber. Beck's voice shook. They've found us. Elara grabbed the drive. Then we move. Now. Outside the vault, more figures appeared. Shadows crawling. Eyes glowing. The dead zone knew they were here. And it wanted to stop them from leaving. Part 8 will bring the epic conclusion, a desperate escape, a final stand, and the future of the dead zone hanging in the balance. Let me know when you're ready. Part 8, Where Hope Still Breathes. The alarms howled like a siren's cry in the deep. From every corridor, every forgotten stairwell, the infected came, crawling, sprinting, dropping from vents and tearing through old security doors. The dead zone wasn't just alive. It was furious. Seal the chamber. Elara shouted as she slammed her shoulder against the vault door. Jace threw the manual lever, and the massive blast door groaned closed behind them, just as claws scraped down its edge. Inside, Beck was already working furiously, loading the files into the portable drive. The vial of the original strain, Project Reclamation, remained secured inside its cryochamber, lights blinking red. "We can't take the vial," he said, breath ragged. "The cryolock's tied to this room's power grid. If we move it, it'll destabilize." Elara clenched her fists. "Then just get the data. We'll come back for the rest, if we live through this." Outside, something slammed against the door. Again. Again. Corin leaned against the far wall, a line of blood trailing down his face. "We've got minutes. Maybe less." "I know a way out," Kira said. "There's an emergency shaft, part of an old evacuation tunnel. Never tested, but it's marked on the blueprint I found." Beck yanked the drive free. "Done. Let's go." They moved fast, flashlights bobbing through the dark, navigating the rusted substructure of Sector 9. The walls pulsed with warning lights. Sirens wailed. Somewhere deeper in the base, machinery began to churn, awakening systems no one had touched in years. The evacuation shaft was narrow, steep, and choked with debris. One by one, they squeezed through, coughing from dust and gas, while the groans of the undead echoed below. Jace was the last to climb. As he reached the top, a hand grabbed his boot. He didn't scream, just kicked hard and drove a knife down into the wrist. The hand let go. He emerged bloodied but alive. They reached the surface at twilight. The city looked no different than when they had left it, but now they saw it for what it was. Not just ruins. Not just infection. A system. A structure built by something learning. Back at the fringe, the survivors opened the gates before the group even called for help. Word had traveled fast, something was coming, and it wasn't a swarm. It was a signal. An organized wave. "They're converging," said the lookout. "Not just the fringe, across the entire zone. Moving together." Elara stood at the command table, Beck beside her, the data drive plugged into the main terminal. Images flashed across the screen, hive patterns, neural links between hybrid leaders, sentinel control codes. But also, vulnerabilities. "The infection can be interrupted," Beck explained. "There's a kill switch embedded in the earliest neural mods. If we amplify the right frequency, it could sever the connection between the hybrids and the core signal." "You mean, stop the coordination?" Mara asked. "Yes," Beck said. "Long enough to evacuate. Maybe even longer." Elara looked at Kira. "Can your tower broadcast it?" Kira didn't hesitate. "Yes. But if we fire that signal, they'll know where we are. They'll come for us. Then we make our stand here," Elara said. "We protect the last breath of this place." Within the hour, the fringe prepared for war. Barricades reinforced. Traps laid. Every last survivor handed a weapon. Even the hybrids, those who still clung to humanity, stood shoulder to shoulder with the others. Corin took the front wall, eyes sharp, his breathing steady. Beck uploaded the signal program into the tower. "They're coming," Jace said from the lookout. The ground trembled first. Then they appeared, hundreds, maybe more. Infected. Hybrids. Sentinels. A sea of glowing eyes and shambling, sprinting death. Beck hit the button. The tower pulsed. A deep humming sound vibrated through the air, inaudible to most, except to them. The swarm staggered. Sentinels stopped mid-step. And the front line collapsed into chaos. Screaming. Turning on each other. Grabbing their heads, clawing at the air. Some dropped to their knees. Others simply stopped. The signal worked. But it only bought time. The second wave wasn't affected. It broke through the outer traps and slammed against the walls. Elara stood at the gate, rifle raised. "Hold the line." The final battle wasn't a heroic stand. It was messy, brutal, and desperate. But the survivors held. And in the end, the infected began to retreat. Not because they were beaten, but because something in the signal frightened them. Something buried deep in the original strain's code, a memory of pain, of loss, of what they once were. As silence fell again over the fringe, the group stood among the smoke and ruins. Exhausted. Bleeding. Alive. Later that night, as survivors gathered around the fire, Elara looked at the battered hard drive in Beck's hands. "It's not just data," she said. "It's proof." Kira nodded. "Proof that hope still breathes in the dead zone." Corin, scarred and silent, looked up at the stars and whispered, "And maybe one day, so will the world." The camera of history had never stopped recording. And now, for the first time in years, someone was ready to tell the story again.